What up, y'all? Welcome to Hangouts with Kev. Today, we are talking about the Netflix documentary, Mr. McMahon. If you're not on Patreon, I do this from time to time on my Patreon. I'll let this clip out of me talking about Mr. McMahon, not the before, not the after, and not what I do later, just to let you know what you're missing out on, because that's how I'm marketing, because I ain't got no marketing dollars. Just got to let you know what we're doing on Patreon and what you're missing out on. I'm not going to do this every time, but I want you to know. And a lot of people asked me to talk about Mr. McMahon on Here's the Thing, but Angel hadn't had time to see it. It's harder to talk about docs and movies and stuff because we rarely ever see them all at the same time, me, Angel, and Josh. And I don't really like to talk about things that we haven't seen. So Mr. McMahon is a six-part documentary on Netflix about Vince McMahon, who helmed the WWF over the transition to the WWE up until he retired in 22, came back later, and then was fully pushed out in 23. Now, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it and you plan on watching it, I would stop here and come back after you're done. Non-spoiler alert, I saw people talking on Twitter. Apparently, if you've seen a show called Dark Side of the Ring, or if you're a humongous wrestling fan, there's not a lot of new information about it. But I mean, there's not a lot of new information in this documentary. But if you're like me, who I am not a hardcore wrestling fan. I'm very well aware of wrestling. I was, like most of us, a big fan of wrestling in the late 80s, early 90s with Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, all that type of stuff. Undertaker. Also picked back up with DX, Razor Ramon, the Wars, the Monday Night Wars. I was watching heavy then. Remember when Hogan turned heel? The Rock and Stone Cold, I was watching then. After the Attitude Era, I fell off. And when I say watching then, I was watching. I wasn't watching every episode. I wasn't reading magazines. I was just watching the show. But I love wrestling. Bret Hart, one of my favorite wrestlers, all that type of stuff. So if you're like me, it was a good amount of new information that I had not been privy to. I think Vince McMahon is the perfect example. This documentary kind of shows it. You can be a creative genius, which pretty much everybody in the documentary admits to. He's a creative genius. WWE wouldn't be where it was without him. He is an astute businessman for the risks he take that he hit on WrestleMania, building up Raw and SmackDown, pay-per-view, the WWE Network, and the deal from Peacock, WWE going public, and now it's a $10 billion brand. And on the other hand, you can be a deplorable human being, sexual harasser, abuser, criminal who has not been yet convicted, egomaniacal villain who doesn't even know where Vince McMahon, the human, begins, and Mr. McMahon, the wrestling character, ends. Especially in the WWE post Attitude Era, they did a lot of blurring the lines between people's real life character and all that type of stuff. I don't know if Vince McMahon knew which was which. He said as much. He said either Mr. McMahon was a gross exaggeration of Vince McMahon, or Vince McMahon is a gross exaggeration of Mr. McMahon. And there were times where I didn't know the difference myself. I was like, well, dang. Yeah, let me first talk about this. Hulk Hogan, boy, you talk about the worst. This guy, this documentary, he might be the only wrestler who comes off bad outside of Vince. Hulk Hogan sucks, man. And like a lot of kids of my age, I was a big Hulkamaniac. He was I watched the documentary, it was designed for me to like him. But I had the little plush toy. I remember the little, they had the little wrestlers. They're like pillows. You could sleep on them, you could wrestle with them, but they were like kind of like this big. And I was trying to rip my shirt off. I watched the movie. What's the name of that movie? They talk about in the documentary. No Holds Barred. What's that smell? Dookie. That was me and my brother's favorite line of that movie. I don't remember anything else about that movie. I don't remember it being good or bad. Apparently it was terrible. I don't remember Hulk Hogan like crying in it. Apparently he tried to cry in it. But me and my brother thought that line was hilarious. Yeah, Hulk Hogan is ultra MAGA. He just went viral a couple weeks ago. Actually, not even viral. I saw it on Twitter, but I didn't see much anywhere else. Where he was like, "Should I body slam? Come on, brother. I'm going to get in trouble for that." He is an ultra MAGA racist, just a terrible guy. But even outside of like the MAGA stuff, and outside of the racist stuff, which he's terrible for the racist stuff, even as a wrestler, Jesse the Body Ventura was trying to get a union going, and Hulk Hogan went immediately to Vince and was like, "Hey man, they're trying to get a union going." I was like, "Bro, why are you doing that?" Yeah, listen, I ain't gonna hold you, Mike. Where's Mike's comment? I am a real American, but for that line, I mean, I was big Hogan. And I loved when Hogan turned heel. And let me just say a quick aside. Earlier, prior to social media, I know stars and celebrities regret this time. When they had publicists and there wasn't no social media, you could be a terrible person. And because we didn't have the 24/7 access we have to celebrities because of social media, we did not know. We did not know. I mean, at that time, wrestling was kayfabe anyway. Kayfabe, if you don't know, means like they stayed in character. They stayed in character all the time. There wasn't no like where wrestlers have podcasts now. They're on social media as themselves. They talk openly about playing a character in the storyline. Early wrestling, when people thought it was real, it was billed as being real. When I was a child and didn't know no better, Hulk Hogan was a racist then. Just nobody cared because all I knew was Hulk Hogan, the wrestler fighting the bad guys and doing the leg drop, brother, and the stash and the baldy. He came early with the baldy and the long sides. And I know he got whoever's attaching the weave to the inside of his bandana now, because you know that hair ain't growing like that. Terry Bollea, you know you don't have nothing on the sides. You ain't fooling nobody. You got tracks tied to the inside of that bandana or glued to your scalp. Okay. So yeah. But he was like, Hulk Hogan's not even liked amongst other wrestlers. And that's like a fraternity. Wrestlers love wrestlers, begat wrestlers. That's like a fraternity. They don't rock with Hulk like that. So I will say, let me talk about the things that I didn't know nothing about. The Ring Boys scandal, trigger warning. There's a scandal where ring boys were like kids that would help set up the ring before matches and take them down, right? They were sexually abused, and that was not common knowledge to a lot of people. Again, wrestling super fans knew, but kind of the same way that Catholic boys were abused, or Catholic or altar boys were abused in Catholic churches by like priests. Same thing was happened to them ring boys. Tony Atlas, absolutely. Tony Atlas was The Rock's dad's tag team partner for a time. He openly admitted on the documentary, he was like, "Man, we abused women. We were terrible to women." I mean, late 70s, early 80s, 90s. Vince did it probably in each decade. His wife it didn't even seem to be a secret that Vince was having these affairs. They became storylines. Some of the characters that the wrestling women that he wrestled, that he had affairs with, he would also have an affair as a storyline with that wrestler in front of his wife. Um, and I kind of remember the whole like Linda McMahon angle. It's a little hazy, but she was just like they were wheeling her around and she was like sedated and he would like just kiss wrestlers in the mouth. It was crazy. And I realized like I'm a pretty good businessman, but I'm not a Vince McMahon businessman. The one constant that Vince McMahon said and that everybody said about him is that he is the wrestling business first. If it's good for the business, he will do it. If it's bad for the business, he won't do it, including having a relationship with his kids, screwing over Bret Hart. I knew a lot about the Montreal screw job. If you're not familiar with that, Bret Hart, this is during the WCW, WWF wars. Bret Hart was one of the wrestlers who was going over to WCW at the end of his contract. Vince had tried to sign him to a 20-year contract, but he didn't have the money to pay him. So he was like, all right, man, go to WCW. And he was supposed to drop the title to Shawn Michaels. So they were supposed to do it in like what's called a schmoz, which is like a disqualification. A whole bunch of guys come out, and then the ref bangs the ring. He's disqualified. He loses the title that way. Apparently, that during this period of time, Shawn Michaels was not well liked by a lot of people, especially Bret Hart. Shawn Michaels himself in the documentary was like, I was kind of a terrible person. And I understand why Bret Hart didn't like me. Also, Shawn Michaels' voice is very gruff. He's like, we're Vince too. I was just a prick, man. I don't know why people don't like me. I know why people don't like me. And that's the same way Vince McMahon talks. Oh, I'm Vince McMahon. So anyway, Bret Hart was like, okay, we'll do the schmoz. It'll be over. And I'll lose the title of disqualification. I'll get disqualified. And it'll be over. Vince was not having that. Apparently, what I didn't know until the documentary, that wasn't even the first time he like screw jobbed somebody. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who watches it or knows the story, I believe her name was Wendy Richter, and I don't remember her as a wrestler. I think that was before my time. Wendy Richter was like, they're like, hey, you're going to lose the championship and tonight. And she was like, no, I'm not. And he was like, what? And it was like, you're going to lose it. She was like, no, I'm not. He was like, okay, it was Wendy Richter. Okay, Kev, all right. I never saw this, didn't know about this. Yes, he knew. We'll get back to that, James. He knew. So Wendy Richter goes out there to wrestle. I forget who she's wrestling. And she gets pinned. She's supposed to kick out. Vince tells the ref, you go 1, 2, 3. He goes 1, 2, 3. She kicked out. Her shoulder was up. And they were like, ding, ding, ding. The bell is over. I mean, the bell has rung. The match is over. And she lost the title when she did not plan to. And Vince was like, I don't care what you said. I don't regret nothing. That belt is mine. It belongs to WWF at the time, WWE. And apparently she quit on the spot and she never wrestled for him again. So knowing that that wasn't even his first time doing a screw job to somebody, because usually the wrestlers, they all knew the storyline. They knew who won and lost. The matches weren't or aren't, I don't know if they're partially are or not. But at that time, Hulk Hogan said that they would know who would win, but, they would call the match or fill the crowd out. And I know some things are planned. Like, I'm going to go get the ladder. I'm going to do this, blah, blah, blah. Like, that part is understood. But she thought, I'm going to kick out and I'm not dropping my title. She was wrong. It didn't even look right. If you watch this, like, okay, she didn't get pinned, but she did. So anyway, Vince McMahon is like, Bret Hart, you're dropping the title, and to Shawn Michaels, and Bret Hart was like, no, I'm not. And Vince was like, yes, you are. Bret was like, no, I'm not. And Vince was like, all right, bet. So Vince told Shawn, Triple H, Every wrestler back there, don't tell Bret Hart that you knew about this. Okay, he told Shawn Michaels what was going to happen. Looks like Triple H knew, but they have footage of Bret Hart in the locker room asking Shawn Michaels, "Did you know about this?" And he was like, "No." Okay, okay. So they know the ending, but the wrestlers for the middle. Okay, that's what I thought. So Bret Hart's asking Shawn Michaels. He's like, "Do you know?" He's like, "No, I didn't know. I was surprised." So what happened is Shawn Michaels puts the sharpshooter, which is Bret Hart's famous move, on him. It's where he like rolls the leg up, turn him over, and you submit him and all that type of stuff. Which you can't really pin anybody from that. They have to like tap out or submit. Say I submit. Apparently, Shawn Michaels put it on wrong, and I've seen that match a million times. Didn't realize why. That's why he was taking so long. But he puts it on right, turns Bret over. The ref dings the bell. Bret Hart loses on TV in Canada. That's why it's called the Montreal Screwjob. Bret Hart really is from Canada. I think he's from Calgary, if I'm not mistaken. They lost. They lost in Montreal. Okay, so Bret Hart. What did you say? Bret Hart agreed to drop to anyone but Shawn because South Selfish Shawn was to Undertaker, Stone Cold, anyone. Oh, dang. Okay. So, um, oh yes, this is what I was gonna get to. Hold on, not that. I'm gonna tell you how Vince got that black eye. Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Well, I guess the temple. Anyway, so after that, we'll talk about this in a second. So Bret Hart spits on Vince McMahon for real from the ring, right? He goes out, he smashes all the monitors, and I remember thinking like that wasn't a surprising thing to smash monitors. Wrestlers do that stuff all the time. But then Vince says in the documentary, like, I knew I owed it to Bret to let him hit me. I knew he was gonna want to hit me, and I knew I had to let him. So Vince goes back there. Bret Hart, did you know about it? Shawn Michaels is like, no. To Triple H, did you know about it? Triple H is like, no. They absolutely knew about it. At least them two. I don't think the rest of them did. Matter of fact, a lot of them didn't. This guy named Bruce Prichard, who it took me way too long. I'm watching this documentary and I'm like, this Bruce Prichard guy looks so familiar. Where do I know him from? Where do I know him from? Where do I know him from? Let me pull up a picture of Bruce Prichard so y'all can see him. So this is Bruce Prichard. He was like working on the show, and he's like, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Because Bret's supposed to win. Y'all see that picture? Okay, cool. Right. This is Bruce Prichard. Let's see. A bigger one. This is him. And this is where I knew him from. I said, that dude looks familiar. This was Brother Love. I don't know if y'all remember Brother Love. He was the oh, this is better. Y'all see this? Okay, cool. This is Bruce Prichard. And I was like, this is Brother Love. Oh, brother. Hi, Brother Love. He used to do like this televangelist thing. I believe he was the Undertaker's manager for a minute. Oh, is that not how it's pronounced? Is it Pritchard? Oh, like Richard with Pritchard? Is that right? Pritchard? Oh, my bad, y'all. Okay, my bad, Darren. I told you I don't know all the wrestling stuff. But anyway, I didn't know Bruce Pritchard was Brother Love, but I'm just looking at him like I know this dude. So Bruce Pritchard was like, I didn't know. He was like, what? Why did the ref count that out? So everybody didn't know. So the only reason I'm telling you this whole story is because everybody hated Vince McMahon. And that led to the Mr. McMahon character. And shortly after that, the whole Attitude Era, because I mean, Ted Turner and TNT and WCW, they had signed all the talent. And to this day, it's still hard for me to understand how y'all signed. They had Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. The NWO was the biggest thing for a couple years. They had Sting already. They had Lex Luger. Then they had Bret Hart. All the money in the world, and it was like, how did y'all not beat WWF at that time? And the only reason is because wrestling has to continue to evolve. The NWO thing, I remember it was like super cool at the time. We was all like, woo, sweet. I remember being in middle school, being like, sweet, Razor Ramon. They were spray painting NWO, but like they didn't. Oh yeah, they had Booker T and Stevie Ray. They sure did had the Harlem Heat and Rey Mysterio too. Yeah, Wolfpack. They had the black and red NWO shirts. They had the black and white NWO shirts, but they didn't. Yeah, they equals WCW. WCW didn't like continue. So all them stars leave. Mr. McMahon becomes this big character. And by Vince, now here's the creative part of him. He had his eye for talent. At the moment he loses all his stars, he gets Stone Cold. I think Monty's having a nightmare. Your dog ever be like, they be freaking out while they sleep? He was breathing heavy. Apparently, you're not supposed to wake him up. That's funny, Cassandra. So anyway, so he finds out, he finds Stone Cold. He gets him from, I believe, TNA or ECW. I believe it was ECW. ECW was headed up by Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman is integral into Roman Reigns' ascension and the whole bloodline angle. And he's a humongous wrestling Hall of Famer, created ECW. And a lot of matches to this day are remnants of ECW. So Vince spots out Stone Cold. And they show this promo, which I've seen a million times. Stone Cold's first promo. Boy, that took my school by storm. We was drinking sodas like Stone Cold. That's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. We were doing the Stone Cold. I Stone Cold stunned my sister into oblivion. I think the Stone Cold Stunner might be my favorite wrestling finishing move. Up until that point, the Legion of Doom had a move where they would hold one of the people up and then somebody would jump off the top rope and like clothesline to the mat. Me and my brother used to do that to my sister all the time. But the Stone Cold Stunner, kicking somebody in the stomach, DDT, I mean, Vince McMahon got Stone Cold stunned a million times. He did it to Linda McMahon. He did it to The Rock. One of my favorite periods was when The Rock and Stone Cold used to be feuding, and The Rock would oversell the stunners, and he would just like be flipping crazy. Let me show y'all a clip of this. We're just hanging out. We don't have no time. This was just good. These are just good times. Also, that glass breaking, when I was at WrestleMania last year and they were rumoring that Stone Cold was going to come out, I was like waiting for that glass to break. I'll let my dog out. You gotta go pee, man. But then the Undertaker's music came. That was fine. But anyway, so when Vince was losing all this talent, he comes up with Stone Cold and the Mr. McMahon storyline. I mean, WCW had all the money. They were going live when Raw wasn't going live. But Vince McMahon's just refusal to lose creates the Attitude Era, which is The Rock, Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, and this like overtly sexual stuff. All that stuff that WWE tries to hide now. That sexual stuff. They had the hoes. I forget the wrestler's name. Who's the one that was a black dude. He had hoes. His like character was a pimp. He literally had women come out and they would be like, "Where the hoes at? You want some hoes?" And he would like be saying that. The Godfather. Thank you. Yeah, it was like, and listen, they said this on the documentary a lot of times. They're like, listen, at that time, man, it wasn't bad. And I can tell you, at the time, as a little horny middle schooler, I had no problem with it. You know, the world has changed now to where you can't do this. You can't do that stuff now. But at the time, that was must-see TV. I was like, yes. Now, I ain't gonna hold you. There was a lot of stuff I didn't see. They had the simulated peens being sucked. I said, Mark Henry had a simulated blowjob. Now, Vince was also a wild boy. They was talking about the storylines they didn't do. They had a storyline idea that Vince pitched where Mr. McMahon would impregnate Stephanie McMahon, even though the character Mr. McMahon and the character Stephanie McMahon are father and daughter, even as characters. And he was like, we should do this. And she was like, absolutely not. And I said, man, what is y'all talking about? An incest baby? But Vince McMahon apparently was abused as a kid, and they had it was heavily insinuated, some incestual relationship type of stuff going on in his childhood. Because I don't care how much you like wrestling. That's my daughter in real life and my daughter as a character. So, like, yeah, this is greatly understated. Vince is a sick puppy. Yeah, Val Venus was a lot. Val Venus was a porn star, basically. Oh, I didn't even know this. When she rejected it, he repitched it as her having her brother Shane be the father. What? Vince and Trump absolutely are friends. There was a whole Vince Trump feud that ended in WrestleMania. Hold on, y'all. I gotta answer it. It's Spice Adams. If I don't answer it, he's gonna put me on Instagram. Hold on. Spice, I'm live with Patreon, but I had to make sure I answered. You're live. People can hear you. Everybody can hear you, Spice.
Just say real quick, you suck for that video, and you try to use Anita, and you suck.
The sweet potato pie video?
Yes.
I like sweet potato pie.
Don't put Anita Baker to any of your videos.
Spice, I always liked sweet potato pie.
You always liked Anita Baker?
I didn't always like her, but ever since
Tell the truth and shame the devil, Cam.
ever since I found out who she was, I loved her. It's been like 10 years, Spice. It's been like 10 years now. 10 years is not enough.
No.
How long, Spice? How many years where I could love?
Anita Baker is timeless.
I know. I mean, I love her. I've been 10 years, Spice. That was 2014 when that video started hitting the web. Spice, come on now.
You remember Ray and Claude went to the baseball game?
Yes.
That's how long it's going to take before I get over this.
Spice, I remember her music. I just didn't know her name, Spice.
Oh, that's what it was. Huh? I didn't remember her name.
Yeah, you know, because you know how it be. Spice, come on, man.
Actually, I don't know how it is. Especially to a person who prefers pumpkin pie over sweet potato.
But I don't dislike sweet potatoes, Spice. My mom was on drugs. That's all she had. She brought pumpkin pie home.
I gotta go after that, bro.
All right, bro.
Enjoy your day.
Where was I? Oh yeah, so Vince was these were the storylines they rejected. The storylines they accepted were just crazy. And the thing is, not even hindsight being 2020, in the moment, the people would reject them. And here's where this is the dark part of it, dark side of the ring. I don't mean, no pun intended. But Vince, though, the interesting thing about this documentary, these grown men, and they were grown when they met Vince, they had a father-son relationship to where they were loyal to this man in ways I've never seen. Undertaker about cried on the document. He did cry almost. He was like, I'll take a bullet for that man. Straight face. I would take a bullet for that man. John Cena, Bruce Pritchard, they idolized, worshipped Vince. Honestly, you could say they worshipped Vince. Um, and the thing is, during that time, like 90s Attitude Era, even early 2000s, wrestlers weren't on guaranteed contracts. They weren't on contracts at all. You got paid when you wrestled. So if you didn't wrestle, you didn't get paid, which, you always, I remember hearing about painkillers, wrestlers always addicted to painkillers. It wasn't until this documentary that I put together why. Recently, wrestlers are on guaranteed contracts, not guaranteed contracts, think contracts, and they're paid for rehab. Back in the day, you were paid per night you wrestle, and they wrestled like 7 nights a week. They worked, I think they said 10 days on straight, 3 days off. So if you're not familiar with wrestling, they do what's called house shows. TV wasn't a big part of wrestling back in the day. House shows are basically wrestling events where you come and watch them wrestle. And right now, WWE still does this. They're called WWE live events. So Monday Night Raw, you see NXT, I believe, is on either Tuesday or Wednesday. You see that on TV. And on Friday, you have SmackDown. Then you have pay-per-view events, or I think they're called premium live events now, because you don't actually do pay-per-view. And also back in the day, they did like closed circuit television, where they basically just rent out a building, put up a big screen, and you paid to go into the building and watch the wrestling event, their big event, closed circuit television. My point was, they got paid per night they wrestled, $300-400, whatever the price was. So a lot of them got addicted to painkillers because they knew if they didn't wrestle, they didn't get paid. Right? I just was hearing, wrestlers get the painkillers. I just thought it's because they got injured a lot. But if you don't pay for somebody's rehab and they don't get paid if they don't wrestle, then them folks are going to wrestle through injuries. So that's why the wrestling business was a big part of why the wrestlers were injured. So the reason I brought that up is because in the documentary, they basically were like, if you didn't go along with what Vince said, you didn't work, or you'd get fired. Like the girl Wendy Wichter, when she didn't want to drop the title, she was let go. So a lot of these people were like, I wasn't really comfortable with this, but it's like, it's Vince McMahon. He's not only your boss, he's not over like the head booker, person who like decides who wrestles who. He's the head of creative, he's head of the company. So you ain't really gonna tell him no, because what you gonna do? Which brings me to another thing. Tony Atlas was talking about Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson was an executive with WWE for a long time. He was accused of, I believe he was accused of sexually abusing the ring boys. But Tony Atlas, big muscular black man. Let me show you what Tony Atlas looked like when he was young. Okay. Let me pull this up for y'all. This was young Tony Atlas. Okay. This is y'all see this one? This is Tony Atlas with The Rock's dad. This is The Rock's dad, and this is Tony Atlas. Okay. Back to this screen. Tony Atlas is not a small man, as you can see. He is very large individual. All right. I want you to keep in mind what we're looking at. Tony Atlas said Pat Patterson grabbed his pecker. Right? He was like, Pat Patterson grabbed my pecker. And the dude was like, did you tell anybody? And Tony Atlas was like, who am I going to tell? When Pat Patterson is the number 2 guy behind Vince, you think I'm going to tell Vince? So, yes, needless to say, his meat got grabbed. Speaking of steroids, They were on them drugs. He did have Tony Allen. Sorry, I spit. He had a sleeveless shirt and a tie on. I thought that was the wildest outfit ever. Let me show y'all a picture of this because I was like, yo, what is you on, Tony Atlas? Oh, let me pull this up for y'all. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm laughing early because y'all can't see it yet. This man had a sleeveless shirt and a tie on. What is this? I get you have muscles, but I said, now come on, Tony Atlas. What is this? But this one, he was like, yeah, man, he grabbed my pecker. Pat Patterson. Grabbed my pecker. Leave Atlas alone. He's from Virginia. He don't know no better. So anyway, they were on steroids. Now, the crazy thing is Vince McMahon went to trial. He went to trial for, so they had a wrestling doctor, I forget his name, Zacharias or something like that. And he was prescribing the steroids, all the medicine, painkillers, steroids, all this stuff. So they said, yo, Vince McMahon makes us do steroids. And they were like, they went to court and they were like, Vince McMahon doesn't make you do steroids. But what happens is the people who are on steroids work. Oh, Zahorian? Zatarins? I thought it was Zatarins, red beans, and rice. Zahorian. So what happened was steroids at the beginning of wrestling weren't illegal. And then later on, they weren't illegal if they were prescribed, but it was illegal to be sold. So the doctor, Zahorian, could get in trouble for selling steroids. But the process of being on steroids was you could be on steroids. So that's what Vince was on trial for. And apparently Vince had told Hulk Hogan went on Arsenio Hall, and I remember this. And Arsenio asked him directly about steroids. Let me see. Let me see if I can find the right one. Shout out to Arsenio Hall show, man. Let me see. Okay, so here's the interview. Them people's television and lie through it. Basically, you got to work hard for 20 years. Basically, you got to do your push-ups, your sit-ups, you got to do your squats. Okay, and you got to run 10 kilometers every day. That's One Punch Man. You lying. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and a 10K run every single day, and don't turn on the air conditioner and don't turn air conditioner in the summer and don't turn on the heat in the winter. You're lying through your teeth. Apparently, Vince McMahon told Hulk Hogan to go on there and tell the truth. And Hulk Hogan was like, no. Now, this other thing, I had actually seen this. I don't know if y'all ever saw this. Hulk Hogan choked out Richard Belzer, I'm sorry, on TV, like put him to sleep. He got sued for this, by the way. This was on the documentary. I don't know if y'all saw this, but this is crazy, right? Watch this. And he sued WWE. He sued Hulk Hogan. It was crazy, right? Because I think Richard Belzer was saying it was fake or whatever. But he literally, I mean, Hulk Hogan, big dude. You know what I'm saying? He ate his vitamins. So a big portion of that documentary is the amount of times that WWE and Vince McMahon got sued. They were some wild boys. Also, do y'all remember the wrestler Jimmy Snuka? Superfly Jimmy Snuka? And I had never heard this. This man might have killed his girlfriend. It was a brush over in the documentary. but his girlfriend fell and hit her head in the hotel room. And then it was like, oh yeah, man, the police found no foul play. And it was likely, very likely, that this man could have killed his girlfriend. Like, it was in the news. I can't remember specifically uh if the girlfriend oh dang, he was charged with murder. They didn't cover that part. They just were like, Vince McMahon was covering up some stuff. Never heard this story in my life. Now, apparently, I got to go the dark side of the ring. But like, how you have 39 contusions and then you fail? How? Yeah, she wasn't feeling too good. You think? You think she wasn't feeling good? So, needless to say, and also I had just watched Iron Claw a couple weeks ago. Do not recommend. Great movie, but I do not recommend it on a Friday night. And that was just about one wrestling family, the Von Erich family, of which whom 5 of the 6 brothers died, one as a baby. Let's see, 3 by suicide in real life. Kerry Von Erich killed himself, shot himself in the heart. One of the brothers who wasn't in the movie killed himself. They kept that part out because they thought it was too sad. And another brother had gotten like septic shock from a wrestling injury, and he killed himself. And yeah, and that was just one family. Also, they talked about the Chris Benoit murder suicide. If you guys don't know who Chris Benoit was, he was a wrestler and he was called like the Rabbit Wolverine, steroid abuser, drug abuser, but he strangled his wife over 3 days, strangled his wife, killed his 7-year-old son, and then hung himself over 3 days. So they were like, the drug problem is a problem. CTE is a problem. They cut to Chris Benoit, basically jump from the top rope and from cages. And like one of his moves apparently was to jump from the top rope and hit you with his head. And he did that a lot. So yeah, Chris Benoit is like not talked about a lot. Eddie Guerrero died at 38. That was another part of the documentary. Eddie Guerrero, all the wrestlers that died at early. Yeah, flying headbutt was his move. Eddie Guerrero died at 38. I feel like Kurt, Kurt something. He died at like 43. Where was Kurt with the long white hair, blonde hair? Kurt Angle is alive. Perk Angle. Kurt. What was his name, y'all? Mr. Perfect. Yeah, Mr. Perfect. Kurt Hennig. Thank you. YouTube be a little bit delayed. Kurt Hennig died. British Bulldog Davy Crockett died. Owen Hart died in the ring. This I did know about. Owen Hart died in the ring. Bret Hart didn't believe that Vince McMahon didn't murder him to get back at Bret Hart. Apparently, in WWE sued this company, the harness makers. They had a blackout in the ring. They were going to drop Owen Hart down in the ring. His character was the blue something. The harness broke and he fell into the ring, died. Okay. Dies in the ring. Audience doesn't know what happened. They turn the lights up. The paramedics are working on him in the ring. They wheel him past the other wrestlers backstage. He dies there. The show continues. Vince McMahon said this on the documentary, and I do believe it. He was like, the audience doesn't need to know somebody died. They came here for a show, not for a death. If I died, move me out the way and let the show go on. I fully believe he meant every word of that. Yes, blood was still in the ring. They was wrestling. The Rock was there. believe Stone Cold, they wrestling. You know, if you like watch a UFC fight, the previous person's blood be in the ring, like blood sport. On the side of the ring, you see the blood of Owen Hart, and them folks is in there wrestling. It's 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 a yeah. He absolutely meant it. That's the one thing I got from that documentary. That man don't care about nothing else. If it's good for the business, Hulk Hogan broke his heart, but when he thought it would come, when he thought Hulk Hogan coming back would be good for business, he did it. He pushed black wrestlers, and not to say they weren't racist. Please do not mistake this statement for that. If you had heat, The Rock had heat. He was like, "You're going to be champion." He pushed white wrestlers because that's what white people wanted. He pushed America when we were at war with Iraq. He made the Iron Sheik the biggest heel when we were at war with Iran. He was being from Iran. Operation Desert Storm. He went too far. He made Sergeant Slaughter, who was like an American, basically G.I. Joe. He made Sergeant Slaughter an Iraqi sympathizer, but then they had to stop that. He faked his own death on TV with a smooth edit that looked so real. People were calling his office to see if he was alive. But I think the Owen Hart, I might be getting the timelines mixed up. But I think the Owen Hart thing coincided. Somebody's death. No, maybe it was Chris Benoit. Somebody's actual death coincided with Vince McMahon's fake death. So they stopped doing it. Yeah. Trump believed Vince died. Okay, was Benoit? Yeah. So Chris Benoit's murder suicide coincided with Vince McMahon's limo death scene. Let me show y'all this limo death scene because I was like, I remember seeing this. This is one of the few things that was talked about. This boy was a so wow. Let's watch this as a